Good evening. This is the Northern Sun Experience, joined right away by former Augustana point guard Jordan Dalton. Now, obviously, this show airs Wednesday nights. All of the first-round conference tournament basketball games, they're going on right now, but we are pre-recording this. Please keep that in mind as we go over these broad-based questions. We'll start on the men's side. Jordan, what's the biggest lesson that you took away from the final weekend of the regular season?
Yeah, the final weekend really showed me that Augustana and MSU Moorhead, they've been playing at an extremely high level all season long. But outside of those two teams, everybody else is pretty balanced. This past weekend, if you take away those two teams, the Vikings and the Dragons, only 4 games were decided by 10 points or more. And so you're getting into that point of the season where you're seeing teams second, maybe even potentially third time down the road. And so I really think the teams that are mentally tough, those are going to be the ones that are going to prevail in the tournament. You know, who's been watching film? Who's been reading scouting reports, who's able to go out and execute game plans on a consistent basis because you are so familiar with each other on the teams. And I also think with such parity, you know, in the middle part of the conference, it's going to really lead to some exciting first and second round matchups in the tournament.
Well, you mentioned those, the first round matchups going on at host school sites right now. Second round from then on will take place at the Pentagon. So right now, going from the first round on, which contender has the most momentum on the men's side heading into this conference tournament?
Yeah, I think it would be tough to pick anybody but Augustana in this situation. You know, they're on a 5-game winning streak after stubbing their toe against Northern State and just really seem to be clicking now more on the offensive end. I think teams tried to use kind of Northern's blueprint of being physical and kind of pushing Augie around, but they've been able to battle and win different types of games. You know, over their 5-game winning streak, they still scored 90 points 3 times. And so they've still been able to get clean and good looks at the basket. But they've also proven they can win in kind of a physical, slower possession type game. Like if you watch the game Saturday night, it was virtually a really ugly game. It didn't really have any flow to it, and Augie was still able to prevail. And I think at this point in time, that's really all they're focused on. They're on a mission, like we talked about, to get to the Elite Eight, so they don't care how they do it. They're just looking to get wins, and I think right now they're just really playing at an extremely, extremely high level.
And then conversely, which contender right now maybe has the least amount of momentum, maybe, as you said, stubbed their toe heading into this tournament?
Yeah, I think you have to go back to Winona State. You know, the Warriors have played pretty well all season, but, you know, I've dropped 2 out of the last 3 games. One of those games was against Concordia St. Paul, who they were able to beat, you know, earlier in the year. And the Warriors have proven to be the best defensive team in the conference all year long. You know, they're holding opponents to just 69 points per game and only 41% shooting. And so they're virtually in every single game they play because they have such great defensive efforts. But they have to find a way to make life easier for themselves on the offensive end. It just seems like they use up all 30 seconds of each and every possession every time down the court. That honestly, toward the end of the game, I think they're just tired. And like we talked about, they have such a great defense. I think they have to find a way to generate more transition buckets off of their defense and also get to the free throw line. You know, those are easy buckets. You're getting clock stop, you get a time to rest. So I think in order for them to really make a push in the tournament, they're going to have to figure out a way to, like I said, make life a little easier on the offensive end.
So according to Jordan, Augie has the most momentum. Winona State has the least momentum. But as far as the bracket lays out, which contender has the toughest road to get to the championship?
Yeah, I'm actually going to go back to the Warriors of Winona State. They got a pretty tough road. Their first round matchup is against Minot State, who actually beat them by 17 points earlier in the year. Potentially second round matchup is against Northern State, who once again won a close game against them earlier this season. And then if they make it through that gauntlet, waiting in the semifinals could potentially be #1 seeded Augustana. And so they have a long road ahead of them. But we always talk about in tournament time, it's a 1-game season. And so you just focus on the task at hand, the opponent in front of you, and just try to knock out that game alone. Like I said, they've been a great defensive team, but it'll be pretty tough for them to overcome those type of obstacles. But they've shown they can play with anybody in the conference. And so it'll be interesting to see how they deal with those opponents this week.
All right, put on your prognostication hat. When it's all said and done, what's your prediction? Which 2 teams are going to be in the championship on the men's side, and who's going to win it?
Yep, well, I'm going to go out on a big limb here and say Augustana and Minnesota State.
That's a really big limb.
It's one of those things, like I said, consistency wins out, and that's what wins championships. And those 2 teams just have consistently been head and shoulders above everybody else in the conference, it seemed like. And they have so many dynamic weapons on the offensive end, but both teams can also get stops on the defensive end when they need to as well. There's great matchup earlier in the year, great matchup last year, to be honest with you. And so I feel like history is going to repeat itself with Augustana and the Dragons playing against each other in the championship game. And like I said, I just feel like all year long, Augie's been on a mission. And so at the end of the day, I feel like they'll be cutting down the nets at the Sanford Pentagon because that's been their goal, and they've played like one of the top 5 teams in the country all year long. And so I don't see too much variation in the tournament this week.
All right, so for Jordan, it's deja vu. Well, when we come back, Jordan's going to break down the women's conference tournament.
The Northern Sun Experience on Midco Sports Network is presented by Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine and Dakota Land Honda.
And welcome back to the Northern Sun Experience. Once again, joined by Jordan Dalton here to discuss women's hoops now. And the same question I asked you on the men's side, what's the biggest lesson you learned from the last regular season weekend on the women's side?
Yeah, one of the biggest or most impressive things from this past weekend was the way Northern State continued to play well offensively. We've talked about all year long how consistency wins out, and I thought this weekend was a great sign for the Wolves on the offensive end. They were able to pick up 2 wins, scoring 71 and 68 points respectively in their games this weekend. And so it's great to see them kind of finding their stride on the offensive end. We talked about it all year long. They've kind of been, wishy-washy at some points throughout the season when teams do play at a higher possession game, higher tempo type game. But now they're proving they can win games, in the 65s to 70 range on a consistent basis. Right now they're on a 4-game winning streak, and they've scored over 68 points in each one of those games. And so it's really, really impressive to me to see a team with such great defensive effort still be able to put points on the board. So that was really exciting to see this weekend.
Then another same question that I asked you on the men's side. Which contender right now on the women's side has the most momentum heading into this conference tournament?
Yeah, I think you have to go to the number 1 seed, Winona State Warriors. They're on an 11-game winning streak and haven't lost in 6 weeks. They've just been playing so well offensively, and seems like they're clicking and playing with a great amount of confidence on the offensive end, led by guard Connor Nagel, obviously earning her 3rd straight NSIC Player of the Week. She continued her hot shooting streak, averaging 17 points a game and hitting 10 3-pointers this weekend. They just seem like a team that is really, really focused and locked in to the task at hand. And when you're playing that well offensively, we've talked about it all the time, that type of confidence is infectious. And right now, I just feel like every single time they step on the court, they know they're going to win the basketball game. And so I really, really just like their intensity that they're playing with, and once again, their ability to put the ball in the basket.
You mentioned their defense. They're still leading the conference in defense. And again, the distance between them and first place and the second place team is at least 5 points. So their defense has been consistent all year long.
Absolutely.
So which contender has the least momentum on the women's side heading into the conference tournament?
Yeah, I think if you look at Minnesota Crookston, they've really struggled a little bit coming down toward the end of the season here. They've dropped 4 out of the last 7 games, and really just haven't seemed to be playing at a high level on the offensive end. Earlier in the year, they were one of the best offensive basketball teams as far as being able to shoot the basketball from the perimeter, being able to score consistently in the 70s and get wins there. Where, like I said, they lost 4 out of the last 7, and they've only scored over 70 points 1 time in those 4 games. And so I really feel like they have to figure out a way to generate a little bit more offense and do so more efficiently, because that has been the staple of their team, the entire season. And when they're playing well, that's what they're doing well. They're moving the basketball. They're getting open looks. They're knocking down shots. And we talked about how that can a lot of times translate to a lot more energy on the defensive end. And so I think the Golden Eagles really have to figure out a way to generate some easier looks from the basket on the offensive end during the tournament.
And they potentially have a tough road down the stretch, because if they win their first round game, they have a potential matchup with Sioux Falls in the second round. Well, looking at the region rankings, the first region rankings were released last week. We're going off of those. Winona State is 4th. They're pretty much a lock to get in pretty much no matter what happens in the conference tournament. But there's a big log jam at the bottom of NSIC teams. MSU Moorhead is 7, Sioux Falls is 8, Northern State is 9, Augie is 10. Only the top 8 teams make it to the Division II tournament. So which teams maybe in that bunching have the best chance to solidify a postseason spot?
Yeah, I think if University of Sioux Falls and Northern State can take care of their business in the first 2 rounds, I think they're pretty much locks in. But if you look at the bottom part of the bracket, it's going to be an interesting potential second round matchup between Augustana and Minnesota State Moorhead, and so I think the winner of that game would actually go, to the regional, and then the loser would potentially be sitting at home watching the rest of the season. And so when you have these type of regional implications for these early round games, they're a little bit more intense. Teams are playing a little bit harder because there's more at stake. And to me, that's the exciting part of tournament basketball. And I think that's why the women's tournament, especially this year, is going to be very, very exciting.
Yeah, it should be interesting to see, especially with that big bunching down below. So when it's all said and done, again, put on your prognosticator hat. Which two teams are going to be in the women's championship and which team's going to win it all?
Yeah, just selfishly, I would love to see Winona State and the University of Sioux Falls play again. That was such a great and entertaining game earlier this season. You got two high-tempo teams that can really put the ball in the basket. As you talked about, Winona State has a great defensive effort every single night out. You got one of the best players in the country, one of the best shooters in the country, in Taylor Varsho. So I would predict that University of Sioux Falls and Winona State would meet in the championship. And then once again, I expect Winona State, they just seem like they're playing so well on both ends of the court. They can lock teams down on the defensive end, and they can put 75 to 80 points up on you consistently on the offensive end. So when it's all said and done, I expect the Lady Warriors to be cutting down the nets.
Should be a fun time.
Absolutely. I'm really looking forward to it. And like I said, there's so many other implications, especially in these early round games, that I really, really think it's going to be some really tight, intense, and exciting basketball.
Should be fun. Thanks a lot, Jordan Dalton. Well, when we come back, highlights from the final weekend of NSIC wrestling and a look ahead to the regional wrestling tournament in Sioux Falls.
The Northern Sun Experience on Midco Sports Network is presented by Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine and Dakota Land Honda.
And welcome back to the Northern Sun Experience. Well, down the stretch of the regular season, St. Cloud State Wrestling continued to solidify its spot as the #2 team in the entire nation. And they've won their last 10 duels in a row. Huskies were looking to make it 11 in a row in the regular season finale against Augustana. We'll start at 157 pounds. Larry Bomstead looks like he's in trouble, but he quickly gets advantage of Augie Sean Hattelstad for 2 points. And those would turn out to be critical in an eventual 6-4 decision. We'll move to 165 pounds. It's the #1 wrestler in the country, Clint Poster, locking up with Mitch Rexzeigel, and Poster gets 2 quick points on a takedown. He goes on to win by majors a decision 10-1. St. Cloud State rolls over Augustana 36-3. The Huskies have now won 44 consecutive conference duels dating back to 2011. St. Cloud State, along with 8 other NSIC teams, will compete this weekend at the Super Region 3 Wrestling Championships held at Elman Center on Augustana University. The first session begins on Saturday, February 27th at 10 a.m. and continues through Sunday when championship matches will take place at approximately 3 p.m. The Division II National Championships will also be held in Sioux Falls. They'll take place at the Denny Sanford Premier Center on March 11th and March 12th. Also, as a reminder, the NSIC Indoor Track and Field Championships will be held this weekend in Mankato on Friday, February 26th and Saturday, February 27th. The multi-event championships wrapped up last weekend. We'll have a complete recap of all the championships and regionals, basketball, track and field, wrestling, and otherwise on next week's edition of the Northern Sun Experience. Well, coming up next, we go under the Northern Sun at Upper Iowa University.
The Northern Sun Experience on Midco Sports Network is presented by Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine and Dakota Land Honda.
And welcome back to the Northern Sun Experience. It's time to shine the spotlight on one of our member schools with a feature we like to call Under the Northern Sun. Tonight, it's Upper Iowa University in Fayette, Iowa, where student athletes explain what it means to be a peacock.
Welcome to Fayette, Iowa.
Home of Upper Iowa University.
Reese and I have both had great experiences here at Upper Iowa, but why don't we let some of the other athletes share their experiences with you?
I chose UIU actually because of my wrestling coach. He came and talked to me. I didn't even plan on wrestling once I got done with high school, but he talked me into it, and it was the best decision I ever made, and I'm loving it ever since.
I chose UIU because I'm from a big town in Minnesota, and I toured this small campus, and I just fell in love with it, and I just knew from that point I was meant to be here, and Just the tennis team here was super nice when I met them, and I just think it's a great fit.
Upper Iowa is the best fit for me because of the small community, small school atmosphere here. Everyone here knows each other, and it feels just like a family, just like high school did, you know. A lot of people are involved in things. You get to know people, go support them, and that's what makes it fun here. It's just the whole family aspect and getting to know each other.
I really like the small atmosphere, and I also like the small classes. I feel like because I'm an athlete and when I'm away on the road, it's a lot easier to catch up with my professors, and my professors also know me by my first name and when I'm going to be gone. And it's nice to know that some of them actually email me and say that they're proud to have an athlete like me in their class.
To me, being a Peacock is all about the word family. Here at Upper Iowa, you really come here for 4 years, and you just, from day one, you're entered into this Peacock family. And it's not uncommon for athletes like myself to get messages from former alumni just asking how you're doing, how the season's going, and it really creates sort of a family atmosphere for the rest of your life.
To be a Peacock, it means to be a part of community. I know here at Upper Iowa we're a small Division II school, so it's nice to be around other student athletes who have the same motivation and drive as you do to compete and excel at what sport you do.
One of the great benefits of being a student athlete at Upper Iowa University is that we have the opportunity to be a leader not only on our team, but we have 2 great student athlete organizations here on campus. SAC, our Student Athlete Advisor Committee, and APE, our Athlete Peer Educator.
The APE program lets us be mentors to the freshman student athletes that come in. We take student athletes that are different from our sport and we help them transition into college, and we're pretty much there for whatever they need. And being on a small campus, it feels like a close-knit family. All the athletes know one another, so we're really supportive of each other. So we'll find each other at all the sporting events and be really supportive in that way.
With 40% of Upper Iowa's campus being student athletes, it's important that we go to all the sporting events and support our fellow Peacocks during competition. You know, it really helps them perform at a higher level, and it makes for a great experience on game day.
And we also get a lot of support from the professors as well. They know our travel schedules ahead of time, so it helps to make up homework beforehand, make up tests before or after we get back from trips, so they're really supportive in that way too.
Along with the great academic support at Upper Iowa, we have great lodging, travel experiences, you know, equipment from our coaches, facilities that help make it a Division I feel.
In addition to the great experiences here as student athletes, our facilities always allow us to compete at the highest level.
Our new weight room training facilities ensure that we're always performing at our peak.
And our athletic venues always accommodate the entire city of Fayette to come cheer us on.
I hope that you've enjoyed hearing about Upper Iowa University.
Go Peacocks!
When we come back, it's DB's Picks, my top 5 plays of the past week. You're watching the Northern Sun Experience.
The Northern Sun Experience on Midco Sports Network is presented by Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine and Dakota Land Honda.
And welcome back to the Northern Sun Experience. It's time for DB's Picks, my top 5 plays of the past week in the NSIC. At number 5, Mary's number 5 puts Minnesota Duluth in the spin cycle. Aaron Collins drives, fakes, spins, and hits the fadeaway off glass against the Bulldogs. We'll slow this one down for you. You can see Collins gets 2 UMD defenders to bite before spinning and eventually hitting the bank. A little bit of Marauder magic kicks things off at number 5. For number 4, Isaac Seavley shows some niftiness along the baseline. Off the pick and roll, the 6'9 Dragon gets around the Bemidji State defender and goes up for the reverse dunk plus the foul. The NSIC's leading scorer is a threat shooting from anywhere on the floor, but being able to put it on the floor is our number 4 play of the past week. At number 3, Minnesota State's Jalen Pendleton goes all out. Trying to run out the clock in the final seconds, Pendleton somehow gets a pass off to TJ Lake falling over the scorer's table, and John Fuqua finishes the play with a dunk. Let's slow this one down. Pendleton being pressured at all ends by the SMSU defenders, but he uses his last bit of space to save the possession, going over the scores table, and he provides the Mavericks with some last-second points to escape with a win, and Minnesota State also escapes with the number 3 play of the past week. For our last 2 plays, we get a couple of last-second 2-point wins. First, Sioux Falls' Taylor Varsho misses the layup, but Sam Connect is there for the putback with 0.5 of a second left to top Minnesota State. Here it is again. You can see no one from the Mavericks boxes out the 6'2 junior, and Connect connects when it counts as USF wins 66-64, a 2-point win for play number 2. But our number 1 play skies above the rest. With time winding down against Bemidji State, Northern State's Sky Warwick shakes, bakes, and nails this game-winning 3-pointer with 2.4 seconds left. Take another look. The Beavers' defense is pretty stout, but Warwick's razzle-dazzle frees up just enough space to nail the game-winning triple. That would propel Northern State to a 71-69 win, a number 2 seed in the conference tournament, and the number 1 play of the past week in the NSIC. Once again, a thank you to all of our NSIC member schools for their time, video, and contributions to this week's show. As a reminder, Midco Sports Network is your tournament headquarters for NSIC basketball. Starting at noon on Monday, February 29th, we will carry all the semifinals and championships live. Tom Neiman will be doing the play-by-play for the men's games. I'll be doing the play-by-play for the women's games. Brad Newitt will be our color analyst throughout the coverage, with Carla Metz on the sidelines. We'll have a complete recap of the men's and women's tournament from the Sanford Pentagon, along with winning coach interviews on next week's Northern Sun Experience.